Good afternoon. It's just on 1 o'clock today on Tuesday, the 27th of May, 2025. And this is the Standing Committee meeting on education. I'm Leon van Wyk. I'm the chair of the Standing Committee. I think welcome to the members. Welcome to Deputy DG Mr. Saudi Abrams and your team from the Department of Education. I am just going to give members the opportunity to just to introduce themselves for the record.
I'm Thomas Walters. I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, all honourable members and all officials. My name is Wendy Kaiser-Philander and I'm a member of this committee.
We're just going to go online now to see and give the honourable members online the opportunity to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and colleagues, and to the officials. I'm Member Boyson and I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
Any further members online? I'm not hearing any at this stage. I'm going to hand over to...
Greetings, Chairperson. Khalid Sayed, online, Leader of the Opposition. Thank you.
Good afternoon to you. Mr. Saudi Abrams, welcome to the meeting today. And I think if you can just introduce yourselves and the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honourable members, good afternoon. My name is Sadia Abrams. I'm the Deputy DG for Education Planning in the WCD. I'll be the lead representative today and would be more than happy to support a very well-prepared and well-equipped delegation from the WCD to present on the quarterly performance report. So I can just ask my colleagues to introduce themselves and we'll be ready to start. Thanks, Chair.
All right, Chair and the members, a very good afternoon. Zukisani Mpisi, Acting Chief Director, Financial Management.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Ian De Vega. I'm the Chief Director for Business Intelligence Management. Thank you.
Welcome to you. The purpose of today's meeting is to look at the fourth quarterly performance report, which would have been from January to March this year. And I think I would also just like to table apologies received from MEC David Mania, from Member Christians and Member Stevens. So I think that is for the record. And I think just on as handing over to yourselves from the Education Department, I know a bit of a question asked, why asking for fourth quarterly results? And I think I come from a finance background and through municipalities, through local government, we certainly had the process there of council receiving every quarter's results. And I think it just helps the committee also to gain an understanding of where the department is, what the challenges are, and then helps committee also to anticipate what the issues may well be that will come out when deals with the annual report and also the audit process and all of that type of planning, so that we can also understand the challenges and the twists and turns that you are likely to have within your sphere. So over to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I may just keep my introductory comments fairly brief, but it is triggered by your own context setting for this engagement. For the record, if I may add, the apologies of the head of department, and to the extent that I am able to represent him today. But on the back of your comments, Chair, we do welcome the oversight. We do welcome, we had similar reflections on a quarterly performance report playback, but I think you've nuanced it with acknowledging the challenges we have. 3 months is a very long time in education. And whilst this is at the end of the quarter four, we have other opportunities to present our performance in summation. But we do welcome if there are any insights you'd like to see at a technical level. We'll cover both the spending performance as well as our performance against predetermined objectives today. And so I'll hand over with those comments to my colleagues to take us through the content of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We will then proceed. Our presentation will cover both the spending performance and the predetermined objectives, as already alluded to by Mr. Abrams. And therefore, I will be presenting the finance part, and then Mr. Ian Devega will be presenting the second part. So we'll immediately go straight to the program level, and after that, we'll talk through to the economic classification. So in terms of the spending of the department as at 31 March 2025, we have spent the budget by 99.83%. So it's 99.8%. Where we've got a budget variance only of what we could not spend of 52 million, which I'll speak to at some point. The two programs where we had issues, which I will allude to later, it's program 1 as well as program 2. In terms of the economic classification, we have your COE spend of 100%, your goods and services 99.1%. And also the underspending will also be on machinery and equipment, which I'm going to provide the context of why we could not spend the budget when it comes to those areas. But in terms of the other areas, we have managed to spend the budget fully. Now, on the spending performance, as I've said on program 1, the main reason why we could not spend the budget fully is because of a corporate refresh project, which is your computer equipment, the refresh project that happens almost every 3 years after the computers are redundant. So the whole procurement process, together with being provided with the equipment, the invoice, the delivery, everything could not materialize before the 31st of March 2025. So therefore, that's the main reason why we could not spend that 52 million. In terms of the conditional grant performance, all our grants, we have managed to spend 100%. That is on HIV, on MST grant, on LPIT, NSNP, social sector grants, as well as ECD grants. And just to provide a better context, EIG and EPWP integrated, though they have been fully spent, they were part of infrastructure earmarked funding. Then in terms of the earmarked funding that we had, all were spent except for one, which I'll speak to. So your mod tutors, we had spent fully the 4 million there, and then your school resource officers also fully spent in terms of the transfers to the city of Cape Town, the mod feeding. That's where we could not spend the entire budget, and the only reason is because of the program is to provide support to sporting activities, after school activities, and also holiday periods. So coming to the 31st of March, as well as the alignment with the school holidays, there was still some feeding that was happening there, as well as timing difference in terms of being provided invoices before year end. So we could not spend that portion. So the 12 million that we could not spend, we will be requesting for a rollover from Provincial Treasury. Then we also had curriculum life orientation earmarked funding, which was also fully spent. So the only underspending there, we will request a rollover for. Now going to the last slide that just provides you a year-end summary. You will note on the rollover concept that I spoke about the previous year, we requested a rollover of 11.7 million, which was included in the adjustment budget in October, November 2024. And that is as well some kind of challenges that we are trying to manage on our side in terms of the invoices or around the mod feeding, because next year we will have the same issue. Therefore, we'll try to find a better mechanism in terms of handling the invoices, engaging with the supplier to get the invoices on time in order to be able to fully spend the budget as voted. Now, in terms of the comparison where we are this year compared to the previous year, last year we had an expenditure spend of 99.87. This year we've got an expenditure of 99.83. We had a very high target this year. We had a hope that we were going to go over 99.9. However, as I've said earlier, the procurement, the delivery, and the invoicing around the corporate refresh project, as well as the mod feeding project, had a major impact on the spending to date, which is as at 31 March of 99.83. Leaving us with 42 million that we could not spend, translated as 0.17%, and the previous year was 0.13% that we could not spend. The rest of the other diagram, I think we had already provided on Q3 when we were here, just giving you the context in terms of our budget, how we moved from the original budget to the adjusted budget. Just for adding some context into our spending, though we received midway in the financial year the conditional grant funding of 321 million on the infrastructure side, we did manage to fully spend that budget. So as I've said, it's only the two areas that we could not spend on, which is the corporate refresh and the mod feeding part only. But the rest of the budget, we were able to spend on areas that we had planned to spend on. So I'll be now giving over to Mr. Tiveka to take us through the predetermined objectives. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mpisi. So just some introductory remarks with regards to the quarterly performance report for WCED. So this must be read in conjunction with the APP, or the Annual Performance Plan of 24-25, together with the in-year amendments that we submitted to provincial legislature. In there, you'll find the revised targets, revised indicator names, the technical indicator descriptions, as well as the medium-term strategic framework indicators, which was recommended by the Auditor General that need to be included within our annual performance plan. So we have a mechanism to measure and review performance against targets, and we have this process. We gather a lot of comprehensive auditable evidence in terms of, the performance information that was submitted. And within each indicator, we have clearly defined business processes as well. On a quarterly basis, we basically provide a report to the audit committee, but also to Provincial Treasury and to .P and DBE. And this is inclusive of our tracking of the annual targets as well. We store all of the evidence in a centralized repository for auditability, and to exact some level of accountability and ownership, the HOD has institutionalized the responsibility manager to be linked to each APP indicator. What that has assisted was that they would put the business process in place. They will assist, because they're the subject matter experts, they will assist with the technical indicator data sets and also clearly defined targets. So this approach obviously ensures continuous monitoring, clear accountability, and maintains the audit trail for the evidence throughout the department. So the goal for the organization is to institutionalize the monitoring, evaluation, research, learning, adaptation, the Merlin context within WCED. And this is by design, so that we put systems, processes, policies, and plans in place to ensure that we meet our objectives in our, journey to meeting the vision that we strive for. So just in terms of the performance, I've outlined this by program, and you can see that program 1 has met all its objectives as outlined, together with program 2, program 3 as well. In program 4, there are 3 targets that were not met, and later down I will explain the deviations, which were, there's a reason and rationale for reasons for deviation. And then In terms of program 5 as well, there's one indicator or predetermined objectives that was not met, and then program 6 met all its targets, and program 7 there were 2, actually 3, sorry, that were not met. So just in terms of performance against targets, annual targets, so POI 401, which is the number of learners, learning support teachers providing support to public ordinary schools. We missed the target by 6, and the target has not been fully achieved due to delays in appointments and conversions. So there wasn't a recruitment process, but that didn't materialize before the 31st of March. Similarly, number of therapists and special staff in public special schools, again, target wasn't achieved because there was delays in filling of posts, but there's also another aspect to this where there's a scarcity of specialist staff, particularly in the rural districts, which contributes to the high number of vacancies as well. The MTSF target, which is a new target, looked at the number of children screened in grade R and grade 1 for developmental delays or disabilities. And here we set a target of 80,000 as a new target. Obviously, we only managed to achieve 52,411. So which was partially achieved then because the implementation reached nearly 90% of the targeted schools. So the strategic prioritization of resources focusing on learners requiring immediate attention. So, and then of the learner screen, 60% were identified as requiring further support. So this indicates that educators and the learning support staff effectively applied a targeted approach, prioritizing learners with observable support needs rather than conducting universal screening. And then SOI 502. So this was a number of registered ECD programs. And here we had 38 programs that were active within the ECD environment. One of the earmarked ECD program applications for registration was withdrawn, and no new application was then subsequently received. POI 706, which is the percentage of learners in grade 9 attaining acceptable outcomes in languages. So this is our systemic testing program, and the department has seen a slight decline in the outcomes for grade 9 language in the systemic test. So basically, the department will set more targeted interventions and language support programs to mitigate the performance challenges more effectively. And then program for POI 708, the percentage of learners in grade 9 attaining acceptable outcomes in writing. Again, there will be interventions to enhance the writing skills amongst learners, to provide more structured writing opportunities and strengthen teacher pedagogical approaches to writing instruction. In terms of SOI 708, which is the percentage of grade 12 learners achieving 60% or more in physical science, we could not, as a department, maintain a sustainable performance level, and the decline in the physical science is in line with the national trend. So Western Cape still came out as number 1 in terms of physical science pass rate. However, we could not maintain the same levels year on year, therefore the dip of 5%. So just some concluding remarks. So in conclusion, as a department, we're making MNE almost the fabric of the organization, where everybody has collective effort in, towards the sustainability and consistency in terms of reporting requirements. So again, there's a clear message that accountability and ownership and competence is at play, together with responsiveness as well. And we're taking a systems approach to dealing with the audit of predetermined objectives to ensure sustainability, collaborative effort, and better governance oversight of the performance information. We obviously try align ourselves to legislative frameworks, but with the help of the relevant experts to ensure that we are constantly on the right track. And we basically, in terms of our performance levels, We've met 87% of our achieved predetermined objectives, and 13% were partially achieved, and there were no targets that were not achieved or had a performance less than 50%. Thank you, Chair. What I have in the annexes is just some robot tables and just the certificate of approval for Q4 as well, which I think is of relevance here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vega. Mr. Abrams, would you like to add some comments there at this stage?
Not at this stage, Chair. I'm more than happy to support any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Committee, are there any ready questions from members of committee? Member Walters.
Chair, let me first comment on the precision of the reporting here. I find it very useful, and also I think it's generally a good performance. If I look at some of the targets, and certainly compared to other settings that I've been in a similar environment. My first question is on page 21, the first, row. The target has not been fully achieved due to delays in appointments and conversions. Is that, should we regard that as a lag and the target will be met at a later stage, or is that a perennial problem we're going to be sitting with? The same question applies to the second row. I think if it's a perennial problem, then obviously it's a source of major concern. If it's a circumstantial one, a variable in our environment that's temporary in nature, I think it's far less serious. And if you go to page or slide 22, the second last row, percentage of learners in grade 9 attaining acceptable outcomes in writing. It is a source of concern. However, it does look like you're intervening there. Perhaps if you can tell us more about what those specific interventions are. And on the last row on page 22, if you can, when you say the decline in performance in physical sciences is in line with the national trend in the subject, if you can maybe just explain more what that means. That the exams become more difficult? Is there some other problem that we should be aware of? If it's an overall trend and it's something out there, again, a variable in the educational environment, it could be a concern. If it's something that is more explicable in terms of testing, then again, it's a different type of matter the committee should apply itself to. Thanks.
I'm just looking at PO. Are there any questions from the platform at this stage? No. So I think if I can perhaps just add on to Honourable Walters there, I share the questions that he has, and I think also very grateful and appreciative of the overall results that have come through. And I suppose just adding on to that with the one understands to some extent these delays that one has in spending, and the context of when one's talking of 52 million. I think I did my calc at some stage was 83 or odd million per day on a 365-day year. And certainly schools don't run the full 365, so it's even less of the fractions, even smaller, in fact, of a day's spending that is not achieved. And I think one must always take that into account. But I think just adding on to the aspect of on slide 21, POI 401, and then at 402. I just recall from a conversation that I had with one of the leading schools in George, where there was some comment to say, there's a delay in getting the necessary approvals to go ahead with appointments coming out of the department. And I guess it's there's a certain expectation that they have of working at speed or working at levels of efficiency that one needs to meet that. And I guess also the question then is the level of communication back to the schools on what level department is achieving on an overall basis, just to try and understand that depth. And obviously this language writing and the physical science, I think just to add to Member Walters there, it's a worrying trend that how do we shift ourselves up? How do we try and improve to achieve those targets? Because knowing how behind we are, or our learners are, in the international benchmarking type of exercise. So possibly just some comments there would be appreciated. Thank
you, Chair. My preference to ask my colleagues just to lead with the responses. They've done the technical evaluation and the responses from the rest of the department, and then I'm more than happy to add to that. Thanks. Perhaps if we can ask Ian.
Thank you for the questions. So this is largely around the partially achieved targets that I'm giving responses to. So in terms of, is it a perennial problem? We have gone out on the recruitment drive. This is a specialist skill that we are recruiting to. So we want the specialists to physically, obviously, apply for these positions. And sometimes we don't get those positions filled due to the response rate, and especially in the rural areas where there's a scarcity of these resources. In terms of the appointments and conversions and delays in that, the context is that we have gone on a recruitment drive, and that we have gone through this entire process. The appointment and conversion, that in itself, I'm not sure if Mr. Mpezi could speak to that. And then in terms of the the specific interventions that they're looking at. So when I spoke to the curriculum colleagues around 706, 708, and 704, which is largely in their space, they will be looking at special interventions similar to the BOT program to facilitate recovery of the language, writing, as well as the physical science. Thanks, Jim. But in terms of the appointment and conversions, Mr. Mpezi will provide feedback.
I think again here we have a kind of a delayed target, in the sense that the process of recruitment is lengthened by where it actually starts. So the nomination starts at an SGP level, then the nomination comes through to head office, then the head office would do the due diligence in terms of the compliance around recruitment policies and regulations, and then the nomination would then be approved for the person to be appointed. So given the conversion matters that we were dealing with the previous year, with the anticipation of the post reductions that were there. So there was a bit of an impact that this process had, and therefore you would find that this target would then be achieved more or less after year end, and the reporting requirements would be to look at the performance as at 31 March. So that's why I'm saying it's more of a delayed target in terms of us achieving it going forward. I don't think we are looking at underperforming on the target going forward. The system would have stabilized in the current year in terms of managing the conversion and the appointments. Thank you.
Chair, if I can just, if I may augment that, I think that one of the latter points of Mr. Mpezi's response, I would have wanted to just illuminate that these are a year in terms of people recruitment, a year in which we had post reduction. So there was that circumstance, if I can describe it that way, where we were decreasing in terms of managing our manpower count, but also in very specific areas of learner support and other areas, recruiting. And so the efficiency would have been impacted, and notwithstanding the comment around communication, I think it was an especially challenging year to be able to get that right. But we committed to focus on the efficiency of our recruitment. And as Ian says, our additional responsibilities to look at talent pools within specific geographical areas. So we've had a perennial challenge getting talent in the right spots, particularly where learner support is needed. And so that becomes a people strategy. And I think my colleagues have explained the focus on that, if not the impact just yet. I thought, Chair, to the honourable member, the targets around the academic performance targets. So firstly, if I can just clarify on the physical science. So the subject or the statement reads, in line with national trends, the performance outcomes for grade 12 NSE physical science in 2020-24 is in fact an outlier to what the trajectory was in terms of improvement in performance for that subject. And so the Western Cape is no different in that regard. It was a decidedly harder paper for a cohort that had come through the COVID sort of 2020 through 2024 trajectory. And so whilst we don't think it was an especially overwhelming physical science paper, we acknowledge that this cohort would have been challenged by it. So it's not an anomaly in the Western Cape. It's in line with the performance in that subject area in 2024 specifically. The systemic test, which grounds the academic outcomes for the grade 9 performance, is not a reading test, neither is it a comprehension test. It tests all aspects of proficiency in language, English and Afrikaans, which is the two areas we test in. The test in itself has 2 or 3 passages, comprehension-like passages, where a critical reflection is required. Our bigger challenge is that because it's a lower stakes exam for the individual, we find a no response to be typical. What we have found, which is a positive indicator, if I can frame it that way, an attempt at a response, but the writing ability has been lacking. So when we had something to judge, it wasn't quite, because I think the anecdotes around the preference for digital mobile communications and, for a typical 15-year-old, we're very sensitive to that. So the intervention is regarded to be necessary now that we have data to work with. We know that vocabulary is an issue, for example, the shorthand note-taking, which is all a contemporary issue. But we have an intervention plan starting at the upper sort of senior level, grade 7, but definitely grade 8. That's where the specialist language teachers are now intervening on the writing. So it is a priority focus area for ourselves. It will come to the next time we test that is, of course, grade 12 in the content subject areas where learners have to write at high stakes exams. But it is an area of focus. If I can assure the panel, it has our priority attention. We will have, as we see the system stabilizing, I'd like to revert, Chair, just to my last augmenting comment on the people recruitment. We'll go through a cycle of stabilizing on the people management and people recruitment side as we go into this financial year. Not taking away from the need to strengthen communication as our plans materialize at a school level, at a community level. Chair, your reference or your example of George is, we take the same seriousness as if it was one of our rural towns. Whilst our stakeholders should know what the challenge is, we will be explicit in communicating if it is a lag on our process or if it is due to, us not being satisfied that the appropriate appointment has been recommended or not to the HOD. Thank you.
Any further questions? Member Walters?
Yeah, Chair, I'm very satisfied with those questions. It tells me, exactly what I was asking for. But of course, that leads to further follow-ups. And this is, Chair, perhaps more of a. I don't want to risk the meeting becoming a different discussion, so let me limit it to that. Where there are community initiatives, people outside of a school who, let's say, have a good relationship with the local school that provide assistance inter alia with teacher support, that kind of, because I got approached a couple of people now. At the same time, I'm not, I don't channel, I'm a committee member. I understand the channels we should follow, and well, I can't speak on behalf of the department. I can't allocate resources. It would be completely inappropriate. How would I channel outside of the ambit of the department, initiatives outside of the ambit towards you, for you to incorporate it appropriately, and at the same time, you don't want to kill the enthusiasm of local individuals with bureaucracy. Who engages? Who does? What would be the appropriate channel? Because I think our job is as public reps, we can help, but we must also not interfere. So, especially with learner support, there's fantastic initiatives, incredible amount of goodwill out there. And I just think from my perspective as a committee member, we don't want to lose it, but at the same time, we don't want to create a parallel system that could do more harm than good. So perhaps if you can, the question is really well-meaning people that are willing to invest in the future of children and want to take hands with the department. Who do I channel them to? How can I facilitate that without moving beyond my role as a politician?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Chair, I'll thank you for the question. I'll do it the other way around if that's okay. I'll ask my colleagues to augment if there's anything that they're specifically aware of. But I think it's an appropriate question because I think of course it is an appropriate question, but I mean to say it's so front of mind around the partnerships that we establish to firstly help recover learning losses. So there's a backlog that we're trying to close. And then of course, an acknowledgement that on a benchmark level, our learners are not reading and counting at the proficiency levels that they need to. So point of departure is we are trying to construct a system of partnerships, whether that is at a local community level, where the support and intervention is to a school or schools in a particular context, because context matters. My response via yourself, Chair, would be to the school and the school district in the first instance. We now have difficulties to scale an intervention because the nuances of what it takes to be successful. And of course, I make an assumption, learner support is both in the context of academic progress as well as non-academic progress. So we do have the benefit in the Western Cape of having a broad, non-governmental kind of sectoral space, whether that's private sector or indeed community organizations. The point about well-intended, our purpose is clear. We are focused on, as our certainly our 2025-26 and our strategic plan outlines, improving standards and improving learning outcomes. And so we are more accurate around what it is that we want to intervene on and how we mean to intervene. And the challenge is for the department to share its strategies and what it is trying to do, whether that is bringing public-private partnerships, bringing community organizations, or indeed using different content and approaches. Because it's often a case of there's a lot going on, Chair. And our first job is to ensure that everybody understands there is an intervention that may or may not have worked. And if we don't manage that properly, we build distrust. In fact, did we give it a fair chance or not? So it is about the school and the community, firstly, being built, being supported with an understanding of either what is coming from the department or what is already being nurtured locally. And the district director and his or her team are best equipped to talk to that curriculum or other interventions. We do now also support the districts trying to pull that together at a departmental level. The feedback we've gotten from the World Bank analysis and other places that we've got a lot of good things going on, but we are so fragmented and so thinly spread that just when we see a sign of an intervention working in one school, we don't scale it and we try something else. So the context I'm attaching to is that we certainly recognize the well-intended individuals. The doors are open to engaging support. It's the how. And the how is very important because it's so sensitive. We don't want to be experimenting, as we're trying to recover learning losses. It's a very delicate thing. And so if the honourable member or anybody else has an approach, then I think my reference would be to the district. If there's no response, it would be to the HOD. I mean, let's not let's shortcut that because that intention needs to be fulfilled and we need to evaluate what that support looks like. Nobody wants to sit waiting forever trying to just get a look in on how they might be able to support the education project. So I think broad openness on process via the district office, if not the school directly, if that's where the community is focused. And we're very happy to support the district. If there's no response, the HOD's office via the EduEd channel is available. Ian, I don't know. Okay. Yep.
Member Walters.
And I'm very, very careful not to do there's a transversal element as well, because it's not typically with these types of things. It's a transversal element between different departments at play that I'm respecting the meeting. I would love to engage with you to understand it better. I think what I will say is I'm actually quite enthused if I see the enormous amount of goodwill that exists purely to support education there. And I think it's a resource we should use. So whatever we can do to channel it in the correct direction, I will certainly take up from our side. Thank you very much, Jay.
I'm just looking at PO. Our members online, if we don't see any hands there, it might be we're probably running towards the end of the session. Just on the grade in the grade 1, that screening process. What would sort of be the total number of learners in that space, and if you could perhaps just elaborate a little bit more on that, one being the targeted schools, and then obviously drilling down to try and identify who those learners are, because that's to me is very critical in terms of the developmental delays or those disabilities, because the sooner you try and catch that learner or identify what the issue is, to be able to provide that level of help. And one thinks of possibly into the rural areas where it might just be a little bit more difficult and more important also to provide that level of assistance on those type of targets that are being undertaken. And I suppose that the level of achievement against that planned target, I think recognizing how difficult it must be to try and set the targets. I think one has to be very appreciative of targets being set there. But I think it's also something important. And I also think there of how one communicates out to the broader public, that, if parents believe that, their child may need some form of assistance, how that then gets dealt with, that one can almost empower the parents then perhaps to try and do a little bit more from themselves as well.
So, Chair, we do have a detailed report on the schools. I can't give it to you offhand, but we can make that available, and also the learners that receive the intervention. In terms of the number of learners within the grade R and grade 1, you're looking at about 175,000 learners, 103,000 in grade 1, and then 72,000 in grade R.
Chair, thank you for your question again. I think I have the benefit of reflecting on the last engagement we had with this committee. We spoke at great length to our ECD plan, as it were. And so your point is well accepted. It's important clarification to make on this occasion. Our targets reflect on ECD. In the education context, we mean early learning programs. And so there are two dimensions to that. Is the number of registered facilities that would cover that early learning phase. And there's a registration and a vetting, and Ian and our district's colleagues are fully working through that. And as he says, he can show an inventory of how we've accumulated now fully registered facilities that would then get support in various ways from the department. The number of learners within access quality education, that's also a function of the programs that my colleague DDG Meyer spoke to last week, where we look at the curriculum content and the learning programs that are delivered at particularly the ECD facilities. It's different if it's at a primary school where we can regulate it. So the nuance now of grade R, for the most part being delivered in primary schools, that's easier to track, manage and report on. as we then move into our non-primary school, our ECD facilities, where early learning and other things happening, nutrition programs, etc., we are able to count those learners. That's an ongoing endeavor, as we reported last week as well. So those two targets, you make a very nuanced point there, Chair, which I want to acknowledge for the record. The hard job is setting the right target, because I think we are very ambitious to create expectations with communities and stakeholders that actually the purpose of moving the ECD function or the early learning function to education is so that we can start the education process earlier than 5-year-old, which is, or 6 years old as we started today. So grade R, legally so, but also our focus now on the 4 and 5-year-olds. I mean, that's taking more attention at the moment. So we'd like to be credible to our communities, and then we need to speak to where those facilities are, what programs they offer, so that those 4 and 5-year-olds can get access and be sent to those facilities, as opposed to, quote unquote, the creche down the road or whatever the case may be. It is about the focus on education. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Member Philander.
Yes, Chair, perhaps just in terms of the partially met target of the number of therapists or specialist staff in public special schools, perhaps just if you can elaborate on the interventions made in that regard, as you mentioned, especially in the rural districts. What is it that's being done from the department side? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, we'll be more specific on, for that particular sector, the special needs. It's an elevation of the more general point about the screening of and finding talented folks that they can work in that particular space. I can't, with respect, answer specifically on special needs education. The point that we believe is first order challenge is getting in different geographical contexts. I think we've illuminated the rural, but it's not only a rural chain. We've taken in the Western Cape a very specific focus on special needs education. The data will show that I think from an inclusive education perspective, we've broadened out not just specific special needs schools, but also have now moved forward with what we call full service schools, primary schools that offers extended special needs support. And recruiting for that is again it's a challenging process. I think we need to be clear on who we're looking for, what we're looking for, and then having the operational process to secure those individuals. And as Mr. Mpisi says, it starts at the school level with a local recruitment process and a recommendation that comes through the bureaucracy. We will get faster and better at that, but our measure of that is our intent in terms of where we offer special needs support, learner support, how many people we then need, and then trying to find efficiency in getting those people directly in. But if that doesn't suffice in terms of a response to the question, Chair, we're more than happy to get a documented response on specifically in the special needs area. It's a very focused area of our department. I think do the responsible thing and get you that detail to the panel as soon as possible.
Thank you. Yes, I think that would be appreciated if we could receive that. Just to give greater insight. Member Philander, any further question there?
Chairperson, I think my follow-up I'll capture in our session when it comes to resolutions and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, as on the platform, we're not seeing any hands there. So I think we've then come to the end of the presentation there, and I think thank you very much for providing us with the Q4 performance report, both from the financial perspective and the predetermined objectives. So and I think in reality you've also moved on again, because I think where we are, we at least midway through our first quarter of the next financial year, as our train keeps running. So thank you very much for that and for the ongoing excellent work that the department is doing. And I think what is also very, very insightful, all these predetermined objectives and what certainly appears to be stretching the targets, which I think is always it's certainly something to be very grateful for and appreciative. So thank you for being with us. I don't know if you've got any closing comments, but otherwise we are happy to release you and to get back to this afternoon's activities.
It'd be important for me to say for the record, thank you for the spirit of the engagement. We do welcome the insight and our commitment. If I can ask through yourself, Chair, for the Secretariat to confirm the very specific indicator, in case there was a very specific. I noticed there were two that references the special needs environment, and then the commitment is to tender a response in writing to the committee. Thank you very much for the time today as well.
Thank you very much. There are refreshments there. Please make sure that you enjoy them as well. And the committee will now just deal with resolutions and any actions flowing from this. And then we'll be joining you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right, over to colleagues here.
Yeah, I'm reasonably satisfied with what we got. I didn't get the impression there's anything left out. I think it was good feedback. It tells us exactly where it is. I just think just want to get the correct terminology right. In terms of the delays in the filling of positions of specialist staff and the learner support from it's essentially what we got here is there's a delay, there's a lag, given the circumstances of recruitment. I just think the committee should make sure that it stays a lag, that doesn't become perennial. And I think I would suggest we keep that on the radar of the committee. And then, Chair, and again, I am now moving slightly, you can see I'm being difficult in this meeting. But I do think in terms of finding extra human resources and financial resources, as you as a chair have also kept in the discussion, I think we need to continuously see whether that model of cooperation and transversal assistance, whether it is progressing. Certainly the thinking is there, but I think it's now the concrete action then. I think the committee should just keep that on the radar screen. But apart from those things, fairly obvious things, I'm very happy.
Yes, I think that, I would agree with that. What was interesting is when I got here before the meeting, they'd asked me, it doesn't appear to have been questions before that standing committee asks for every quarter for this type of report. And, I did also just try and explain to them. And I think where you mentioned correctly, keeping on the radar, the only way we can do this is by looking at every quarter report and having a look at these predetermined objectives and where they are. Some of them are only measured at the end of the year. But, certainly it probably is something that the committee should pay a lot more attention to, is the predetermined objectives, which are the ones that are measured on a quarterly basis, which are mentioned on the annual basis, are measured, and how we then interact in dealing with it, because often when we receive that annual report, we are already almost 6 months into the next financial year, when the planning has already been done for the next year. So I think it is the old story of keeping the dog's tail short, that you are a lot closer to the target at all times in terms of our comments. I don't know if there are any other resolutions or requests that we could have.
Chair, perhaps just in the response to the special needs partially met and the challenge that the department has in that regard, in terms of what is the department's approach, and how you must assist me, Chair, and the PO perhaps in wording that correctly. But what is the department's approach in making sure going forward that they are in a position to fill those vacancies? I can imagine that it is a position with a special kind of expertise linked to it. For example, on a tertiary level, is there some kind of, I also almost want to say targeted, not recruitment, but making provision on that tertiary level that skill with what they need, yes, and providing support to such students, for example, that want to pursue, to make sure that they do have sufficient expertise in terms of teaching when it comes to that special needs level.
Right. So just to get clarity, so you're looking at whether there is a special needs module that's assigned to meet the needs of those teachers that are teaching those special needs learners, whether there's a curriculum or a, how do you say?
It's almost a program.
A program.
Yes.
Yes. I will word it in a way
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
look at whether
that is what I
know
mean.
what you're trying
Yeah,
to say,
yeah.
but let me just play around with to get that into a structured sentence, and then I'll send it to you
Sure.
and see whether that is what I understand. What you're
Yeah.
trying to say is whether there is a structured course that is assigned to meeting the needs of those learners in the classroom, because every teacher is taught on a certain level, which is
Yeah.
parallel to everything. But now we're looking at something that's on a different level.
Yes.
To those
And whether
needs.
the need of the department are actually fed into.
Okay. Do you want us also to look of whether CETA is also involved in that need to structure it as well?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, then I will draft it in such a way, and then I'll send it to you first to see whether it is in line with what I'm thinking and what you are saying.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think are those all comments there? I think we are covered, and the meeting is then adjourned at 13:59. Thank you very much. Welcome to have refreshments, and we'll certainly have the refreshments that our members online are not enjoying.
That's more for us.
More for us.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.